You thought you knew what was real. But reality is not a structure. It is a consensus hallucination, stitched together by neural guesses and historical lies. Tonight, we peel that stitching back, thread by thread, until nothing remains but the silence between collapsing thoughts. You wake up every day, believing you are the same person who went to sleep the night before. But the neurons that fired yesterday are not the same as today. Your memories are plastic, your thoughts recompiled. Every second of your identity is written in wet sand, reshaped by chemical tides. And yet you say, I am me, but who is me? This is not a metaphor. This is neuroscience. You are 86 billion neurons firing in patterns you cannot observe. The illusion of continuity is so convincing that it never occurs to you to question it. But you should, because the you of this sentence is not the same as the you who started reading it. Let's start with the ship of Theseus, an ancient Greek paradox. Replace every plank in a ship, one by one, until none of the original remains. It's still the same ship. Now imagine replacing every cell in your body over time, which you do. Every 7 years, give or take, your physical structure is entirely renewed. The atoms in your brain have moved on. The thoughts remain. Or do they? Your memory tricks you. That birthday party when you were 6? Every time you recall it, you overwrite the file. Your recollections are reconstructions, not preserved footage. You are not remembering. You are inventing. So if your body is new and your memories are false, what is left? Descartes said, cogito, ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. But that presumes the I doing the thinking exists. Modern psychology challenges that. Split brain patients, those with the corpus callosum severed, show 2 separate centers of consciousness in the same skull. One hand buttons a shirt, the other unbuttons it. One hemisphere says, I want to go for a walk. The other says, I'm tired. So which one is you? Identity is a confabulation, a story you whisper to yourself in the dark. And stories can lie God. We crave a stable narrative. Without it, we unravel. But your brain doesn't care about truth. It cares about coherence. If you lose sight in one eye, your brain edits out the blind spot. You don't see the gap. You see a fabricated world that feels whole, even when it isn't, especially when I send single quotes T. Now, take this deeper. In 1977, psychologist Ulrich Nesser filmed students passing a basketball and asked viewers to count the passes. Midway through the video, a woman with an open umbrella walks through the scene. Half the viewers never noticed her. This isn't forgetfulness. This is inattentional blindness, the brain's ruthless filtering of inconvenient reality. You see what you expect. You remember what fits. You feel what your chemicals tell you to feel. And yet, you claim to be autonomous. Talk about the Delbuff illusion. Place 2 identical circles inside larger ones, one big, one small. The identical circles will appear different in size. Why? Because your brain doesn't trust raw data, it interprets it through context. Meaning your perception of reality is a manipulated guess, not a direct experience. This applies to time, too. Ever notice how childhood summers felt infinite? And now years slip past like days? Your brain doesn't measure time linearly. It compresses or expands it based on novelty. Routine collapses the sensation of time, which means your sense of life's duration is another illusion. Your life is not what you think it is. It never was. You imagine yourself as a single consciousness walking through time. But in sleep, during dreams, in deep meditation, or under anesthesia, that continuity breaks. There is no persistent observer, just reboots. And in the silence between those reboots, who are you? Let's go further. Consider solipsism, the philosophical position that only your own mind is sure to exist. Everything else, your friends, your family, even this voice in your head, might be a projection, and there's no way to prove otherwise. You say, that's ridiculous. The world continues without me. But does it? You cannot step outside your own perception. You never have. The color red? That's your brain interpreting a frequency of light. It could be completely different for someone else. There's no way to verify, no way to compare your perception to another's. You are sealed inside a skull with no windows. Only interpretations, and those interpretations are fragile. A slight imbalance in neurotransmitters and the whole system collapses. Depression, schizophrenia, dementia, these are not mental problems. They are what happens when your interpretive machinery breaks. And if your sanity can be undone by a flick of serotonin, was it ever stable to begin with? You believe in linear time, but physics tells a different story. Einstein showed us that time is relative, bendable, stretchable. From the perspective of a photon traveling at the speed of light, time doesn't pass at all. It experiences the entire journey instantly, which means the universe can and does exist outside your temporal illusion. And yet, you still believe in before and after. You still believe in cause and effect. Why? Because your brain is a pattern-seeking device. It creates causality where none exists. Consider B.F. Skinner's pigeon experiment. He fed pigeons at regular intervals, regardless of their behavior. But the pigeons began repeating whatever they were doing right before the food arrived, spinning, pecking, hopping. They believed their actions caused the reward. Superstition, ritual, false causality. Now look at your own life. Your routines, your beliefs, your certainty. How much of it is just pigeon logic? You believe in free will, that your choices are yours. But every fMRI scan says otherwise. Neuroscientist Benjamin Libet showed that brain activity predicts decisions before the subject becomes consciously aware of them. The decision is made before you make it. So, if your choices are illusions, if your memories are fictions, if your identity is fluid, if your perceptions are filtered, if your reality is guessed, then who exactly are you? Or better yet, who's asking the question? The sound of history folding in on itself. You have always believed in the arrow of history, that it moves forward, progressing from darkness into light, ignorance into knowledge. This belief is not just comforting, it is necessary. Without it, there is no reason to endure. But history is not an arrow. It is a spiral, a loop, a broken record spinning on a player no one remembers building. Let's start with the date. March 8, 1949. A man named Walter Jackson Freeman enters a hospital room, holding nothing but a surgical pick and a hammer. He is not a neurosurgeon. He has no formal training in brain surgery. And yet he walks calmly toward a sedated woman, pushes the pick behind her eyeball, and hammers it into her frontal lobe. The procedure is called a transorbital lobotomy. It was approved. It was popular. It was broadcast on television. It was done 50,000 times in America alone. We tell ourselves history was a series of bad choices, made by people who didn't know better. But Freeman wasn't an exception. He was the norm. A society collectively agreed to silence difficult people by disabling their minds. Mothers, wives, veterans, children. And we called it progress. What does that say about your modern beliefs? The scientific facts you cling to, now are they truth? Or are they just convenient consensus? Would you have stopped Freeman or applauded him? History is not memory. It is narrative. It is written by those with power, enforced by those with fear, and internalized by those too exhausted to fight. Consider this. In 1492, you are told Columbus discovered America. That is the date etched into the bones of your education. But America had been discovered countless times before by Polynesians, by the Norse, by indigenous nations who had built civilizations without European knowledge or approval. Still, the narrative remains 1492, because history is not about what happened. It is about what is allowed to be remembered. Now recall the Mandela effect, a phenomenon where thousands, sometimes millions, of people share the same false memory. Berenstain Bears instead of Berenstain. Nelson Mandela dying in prison. A non-existent movie called Shazam starring Sinbad. These are not mistakes of recollection. They are failures of consensus. Cracks in the shared simulation. So what happens when consensus breaks? You scramble. You double-check. You accuse your memory. But the moment you question your past, the scaffolding collapses. Because if one memory is false, any of them could be. All of them might be. Even this one. Let's go deeper. The philosopher Michel Foucault argued that history is written through discursive formations, not facts, but networks of knowledge constructed by institutions, schools, prisons, clinics. What you believe to be the truth is just the dominant discourse at a particular moment. It survives not because it is correct, but because it is enforceable. Slavery was once truth. Eugenics was once truth. That Earth was the center of the universe truth. Until it wasn't. And what about now? What is currently true only because it is too dangerous to say otherwise? Even science, the supposed bastion of objectivity, is not immune. Consider the replication crisis in psychology. Over 60% of influential studies cannot be replicated. That means they might be false, but they are still taught, still cited, still shape your worldview. And that world keeps spinning. But perhaps the most terrifying collapse of history is not in what is remembered, but in what is forgotten. Let me tell you about the Library of Alexandria, earned not once, but multiple times, the greatest collection of ancient knowledge destroyed. Do you know what was lost? You don't. No one does. That's the point. There might have been languages, sciences, cosmologies far more advanced than our own, gone, without residue. Knowledge can vanish. What you know today is only what survived yesterday. And sometimes, survival is accidental. The oldest written recipe is for beer. The oldest legal code property law. The earliest surviving religious texts are not necessarily the most profound, only the most preserved. Not best, not true. Just enduring. So here you sit, surrounded by digital information, believing the internet will remember for you. But what happens when the power fails? When servers collapse? When context is lost? Imagine someone uncovering your civilization in 5,000 years. What would remain? Fragments of memes, confused data, languages with no key. They would reconstruct your reality, but it would be fictioned out just like you've done with the past. Let's take it further. Think of Gödel's incompleteness theorems, mathematical proofs that in any logical system there are truths that can never be proven. This means there are limits to what any knowledge system can explain. History cannot be complete. Science cannot be complete. Your understanding of the universe cannot be complete. There will always be something beyond the edge of your model. But your mind demands completeness. It fills the holes, invents stories, smooths over contradictions, and you call this reality. So, tell me, if your identity is a narrative, if your memories are malleable, if your history is rewritten, if your knowledge is incomplete, if your consensus is fabricated, then what, exactly, are you standing on? What do you cling to when the past no longer exists? You are not seeing this. Open your eyes in the morning and assume the world is there. Solid, continuous, self-evident. You assume you see what is real. You don't. You see shadows. Not in the poetic sense, in the neurological one. Your eyes are not windows, they are translators. Light doesn't look like anything. Photons have no color. They have energy, frequency, and motion. Color is not in the world. It's in your mind. Let's make this clearer. Color does not exist. What you call red is simply electromagnetic radiation oscillating at around 430 to 480 Thz. That wave has no hue. Your cone cells in the retina detect the frequency, and your brain invents a color experience. Invents. If a different species evolved different photoreceptors, their red might be your blue, or something utterly alien. What does that mean? It means reality is filtered. Not metaphorically, literally. You will never experience the world directly. You are imprisoned inside a skull, watching a hallucination generated by electrical patterns. Let's go deeper. Your brain receives raw sensory input, but that input is incomplete, ambiguous, and constantly changing. So it fills in the gaps. You never truly see the present moment. Your brain takes 100 milliseconds to process visual input. That's a tenth of a second lag. What you're seeing right now is the past. Now, consider the blind spot in your vision, the place where the optic nerve connects to the retina. There are no photoreceptors there. It's a hole. But do you see it? No. Your brain invents the missing content. You are hallucinating wholeness. This is not a poetic term. This is how sight works. Take the Kinesa triangle, an optical illusion where your brain sees a white triangle that doesn't exist. It constructs borders where none are drawn. Why? Because your mind prefers meaningful shapes over raw data. You don't see what is. You see what ought to be. Let's talk about faces. You are evolutionarily wired to see them so much so that you see them where they don't exist. In clouds, in power sockets, in rock formations. This is pareidolia, a glitch in the recognition system. It's so strong that some infants can recognize faces before they can sit up. Your perception isn't rational. It's deeply emotional, deeply biased. Now imagine that your entire experience of the world is made of these guesses. Because it is. Let's test this with a thought experiment. You are in a dream. Within the dream, you see people, walls, colors. Feel textures. You move through time and space. But none of it is happening. Your brain is constructing an entire world out of memory and imagination. That's not fantasy. That's a nightly neurological reality. Now ask, what makes waking life different? You say, because it's stable. Is it? You forget most of your life. You misremember half of what remains. You hallucinate blind spots. You invent cause and effect, and you're delayed by a tenth of a second at all times. So again, what is the difference? Maybe it's that dreams end. But so does life. Now meet blindsight. This is a neurological condition where people who are technically blind can still detect objects, navigate spaces, even identify emotions on faces without consciously seeing them. The conscious mind says, I see nothing. But the brain says, I know exactly what's there. So who's in control? Let's make this worse. Your visual cortex occupies 30% of your brain, but only a fraction of the input comes from your eyes. The rest is feedback memory, expectation, attention. What you see is shaped more by what you believe than by what's. Actually, they're you see through a filter of assumptions. Change those assumptions, and the world changes. Take the Rubin vase, an image that flips between a vase and two faces depending on what you focus on. The data doesn't change. Only your interpretation does. Meaning perception isn't passive. It's active. And worse, it's unstable. Now scale that instability up. You don't just misinterpret pictures. You misinterpret people, events, intentions. You project motives. You assign patterns. You seek symmetry in chaos because your mind craves narrative. But narrative is not truth, it's compression, which brings us to change. Blindness, a phenomenon where large alterations in a visual scene go unnoticed if they occur during a brief visual disruption. Entire. People can vanish, switch clothes, disappear, and you will not notice. You believe you are paying attention. You're not. You believe your perception is whole. It's not. You believe your awareness is reliable. ISN single quotes T. Now ask yourself, if your senses can be fooled, if your eyes are sculpted hallucinations, if your memory edits reality as you go, if your brain prioritizes belief over data, then what part of the world can you truly say you have seen? What if all this time, you've been staring at nothing? The self that watches you back, you tell yourself you are one. A single, unified self moving through time, making choices, learning, remembering, desiring. But look closer. Watch yourself watching yourself. Listen for the echo. You are not one. You are a committee. And some of them want you dead. Begin with the split brain experiments. In the 1960s, neuroscientist Michael Gazzaniga studied patients whose corpus callosum, the bridge between the left and right hemispheres, had been surgically severed to treat epilepsy. The results shattered the idea of a singular mind. One hemisphere could identify an object. The other could not. One could speak. The other could only gesture. In one case, a patient's left hand controlled by the right brain would try to stop the right hand from performing tasks. One side of the brain literally fought the other. So where is you in this? Which half is real? Maybe neither. You have an inner narrator, the voice that talks to you all day, commenting, judging, worrying, planning. You assume it is you, but it isn't. It's just one part of your brain, the left hemisphere interpreter, according to Gazzaniga. It weaves stories out of chaos. It explains, rationalizes, post hoc, invents cohesion where none exists. It is not truthful. It is useful. And it lies constantly. You've noticed this. You forget where you put your keys, and the voice says, you're always losing things. You get rejected, and it says, you're unlovable. You succeed, and it says, they'll find out it was luck. This voice is not a friend. It is a paranoid storyteller, locked in a loop of self-justification. But even more disturbing, you don't control it. Try to stop thinking. Try to silence the inner monologue. You can't. Thoughts arise. From where? Not from you. From beneath. From a system that operates outside your awareness, using patterns you didn't choose, desires you didn't create, memories you didn't. Consent to. And still, you believe you are the author of your mind. But authors revise. Authors choose. You just receive. Now let's talk about internal family systems therapy, a model that doesn't treat the self as singular, but as a system of parts. Some are protectors. Some are exiles. Some are inner critics. These are not metaphors. They behave autonomously. They argue, sabotage, withdraw. You feel it. A version of you that wants to heal. A version that wants to disappear. The version that only appears when you're alone. You are a parliament without a speaker. Consider Freud's model-eyed ego, superego, or Jung's shadow, anima, persona. Each one a fragment of psyche with different drives. Some want pleasure. Some want control. Some want to hide, but none of them are you. They are masks worn by a system that never reveals its face. Even your desires aren't yours. A study by neuroscientists, soon. Brass, Hines, and Haynes, 2008. showed that the brain initiates actions up to 7 seconds before you become consciously aware of the decision. Your brain decides. Then it informs you. You rationalize. You call it free will. It's not. You are a puppet who thinks he's the puppeteer. Let's go deeper. You talk about having a subconscious as if it's a basement beneath your rational mind. But this implies a top and a bottom. That's false. Consciousness isn't layered. It's fractured. Daniel Kahneman's dual system theory. System 1 is fast, emotional, automatic. System 2 is slow, deliberate, calculating. But most of your choices, food, partners, political beliefs, are made by System 1 and justified by System 2. You don't choose based on reason. You choose based on impulse and let your intellect clean up the mess you are not in control of. Your mind, you are a witness to its justifications. Now ask, when you feel shame, who is shaming whom? When you feel fear, who is afraid and who is watching? When you lie to yourself, who is lying and who is being lied to? How can there be 2 of you? Or 10? There is no core. No stable essence. Buddhism calls it anatta, self. The illusion that you are a unified being is what causes suffering. If you truly were a self, permanent and unchanging, you would not suffer when someone insults you. But you do because your ego is fragile, because you're trying to hold together a fiction. And what happens when that fiction breaks? In cases of dissociative identity disorder, different personalities emerge with distinct memories, handwriting, even allergies. Their bodies react as if inhabited by entirely different people. These aren't stories. These are documented, scientifically verified. You can inject one identity with an allergen and get a rash. Inject another? Nothing. So what's the difference between a person with 10 selves and you? Only awareness. You call your fragments moods, habits, quirks. But they control you just the same. One part of you starts a diet. Another eats the cake. One wants to live. Another Googles ways to disappear. You believe you're steering the ship, but there is no ship, only waves, and the illusion of a hand on the wheel. If the self is a construction, and consciousness is fragmented, and decisions are made before you know them, and your thoughts don't obey you, then who exactly is you? And what happens when the part of you asking this is just another mask? Time isn't passing. You are. You feel it constantly. The soft pull of seconds moving forward. The trip of now into was. The slow erosion of the future into memory. But time isn't real, not the way you think it is. You are not moving through. Time is moving through you. Let's begin with your most basic assumption, that time flows from past to present to future, that it's linear, that it has direction. This is not physics. This is psychology, because physics tells a different story. According to the block universe theory, grounded in Einstein's theory of relativity, all moments in time already exist. Past, present, and future are equally real. There is no privileged. Now, the only thing that changes is your position within the block. You are a point of consciousness sliding across a frozen landscape. You are not living through time. You are a time stump, flickering through a fixed eternity. What you call the flow of time is just your brain, stitching moments together like frames in a film reel. That stitching creates the illusion of movement. But there is no movement. There are only stills. Take a breath. Feel it pass. Now understand, it never moved. You did. Let's go further. Julian Barber, a theoretical physicist, argues that time doesn't exist at all. He proposes a model called Platonia, a realm of all possible configurations of the universe. What you perceive as motion is just a leap from one arrangement to the next. There is no past, no future, only a cloud of frozen snapshots. You are not a traveler. You are a flicker. But then, why do you remember the past and not the future? Because memory is asymmetrical. You assume. This asymmetry reflects time itself. But it's likely just a cognitive bias. Your brain evolved to record certain patterns for survival. Memory is not time. It's an archive of useful mistakes. You remember being burned by fire, not because it's in the past, but because remembering helps you avoid dying again. You think of time as a river, but it's more like a mirror, endless reflections, all simultaneous, only one of which you can see at a time. But even your memory of before is a lie. Studies in temporal cognition show that your brain regularly rearranges events. In experiments, people recall sounds before flashes, even when the flash happened first. Their brains retroactively edit the sequence to match expectations. Time, in your mind, is not a timeline. It's a suggestion. And your sense of duration? A glitch. You've felt this. The way minutes stretch under stress, then vanish in joy. The way months evaporate in routine, but seconds dilate during a car crash. Your perception of time is tied to novelty and fear, not to objective measurement. So what is now? Neurologically, now spans about 3 seconds. That's the window in which your brain can bind events into a single experience. Anything outside that range becomes before or after. So your present moment is not a point. It's a lie your neurons tell to keep you calm. Now consider entropy, the only physical law that distinguishes past from future. Everything else in physics is time symmetric. Entropy is not about time itself, but about disorder. Systems tend toward it. Eggs break, smoke disperses. You die. But maybe it's not time moving forward. Maybe it's just structure collapsing. And death, then, is not the end of time. It's the end of arrangement. The end of the illusion of forward. But this illusion is so strong, you can't help but divide your life into before and after. Childhood, adolescence, that one accident, that one love. You are not living a story. You are writing it retroactively, shaping the past to fit your current emotion, your current need. You change the past every time you remember it. You're not revisiting memories. You're rebuilding them. So what about the future? You imagine it constantly. You fill it with plans, anxieties, fantasies. But the future isn't there. It hasn't happened. And when it does, it will not feel like the future. It will feel like now. And then it will vanish, because you never experience the future. You only experience the collapse of possibility into moment, the narrowing, the pruning. All the lives you could have lived, amputated, second by second, until you're left with a single thread, and even that unravels behind you. Now, let's talk about déjà vu, the sensation that you've lived this moment before. It's a neurological hiccup, a delay in the processing of short-term memory. Your brain receives the same input twice and interprets the second as familiarity. But what if all of life is déjà vu, the present mistaken for memory, the memory mistaken for the present? The cycle so fast, so recursive, you can't tell which is which. And the terror is this: there may be no difference. You were taught to fear the end of time, the final moment, the deathbed breath. But perhaps the greater fear is this, that the end already happened, and you're just watching the rerun. If time is a block, if memory is a fiction, if future never arrives, if you are a sequence, not a soul, then what are you trying to outrun? What exactly are you waiting for? The silence between the words you think in language. You speak to yourself in sentences. Your thoughts form as words. That voice inside your skull, it feels like you. But what were you before words? And what are you when they fall silent? Language is the lens through which you see the world. It does not describe reality. It constructs it. You do not see a tree and then name it. You name it and then perceive tree. Before the word, it was shape, shadow, motion, scent. After the word, it is a category, fixed, familiar, dead. You stop seeing the thing. You now see the name. Let's begin with the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, the theory that language shapes cognition. In its strong form, it suggests that if a language lacks a word for a concept, the speaker cannot think that concept. You might dismiss this, but try to describe a color that doesn't exist. Try to name an emotion you've never felt. Try to imagine a shape that isn't round or sharp. Language is a prison with invisible walls. In the Amazon rainforest, the Parahu people have no words for specific numbers. They do not count. They understand few and many, but not 4 or 10. When researchers gave them counting tasks, they couldn't perform them, not because they were unintelligent, but because their language didn't encode quantity. So ask yourself, what can't you think because you've never been given the words? Now consider your inner monologue, the voice narrating your life. You assume it's essential, but not. Everyone has it. Some people don't hear words in their heads. They think in images, feelings, impulses. To them, your inner voice sounds like noise. To you, their silence sounds like absence. Which is the truth? Which is more real? Let's descend. Deeper. Language didn't evolve to express truth. It evolved to manipulate, to persuade, to coordinate. Steven Pinker calls it a window into human nature. But what if it's a mirror? What if language reflects back the structure of your neurology, not the structure of reality? In dreams, you often lose language. You experience things you cannot name. In trauma, language fails your brain, shuts down Broca's area, the center for speech. This is not metaphor. This is neurophysiology. Words vanish. And what remains? Raw sensation, pure fear, unencoded truth. Language is not the ground beneath your thoughts. It is the shroud. Let's go further. In 1972, feral child Jeannie was discovered in Los Angeles. Locked in a room for over a decade, she had no exposure to language. When rescued, she could not speak. Despite years of rehabilitation, she never fully acquired language. Her case proved a terrifying truth. There is a critical period for learning language, after which it becomes nearly impossible. So if you had not learned words when you did, you would not be you. You would be something else. Something unrecognizable. Maybe. Something closer to real. Language fragments. It carves. It divides a continuous world into concepts. You say sky and ground, but there is no line between them. You say beginning and end, but time is seamless. You say self and other, but you are porous, leaking identity with every glance, every touch, every sentence. The Tao Te Ching opens with, the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. Every attempt to describe reality severs. Words are scalpels, and yet you use them to build yourself. Let's try something else. Close your eyes. Imagine the word I. Now remove it. What remains? Consciousness, perhaps. Sensation. But no speaker. No center. This is the silence behind the voice. This is the self before grammar. Your mind does not know what to do here. It reaches for words, but they disintegrate. Because language can only circle the truth. It can never land. It is not the territory. It is the map. And the map was drawn by children in caves thousands of years ago, trying to name the thunder. Even now, you confuse the word with the thing. Love, death, God, these are not realities. These are sounds wrapped around something unspeakable. You have never touched the thing itself, only its echo. Let's talk about aphasia condition, where language is lost due to brain damage. People with Broca's aphasia struggle to speak, though they understand. People with Wernicke's aphasia speak fluently, but say nothing. You could have either in a moment. A stroke, a car crash, a shift in blood flow, and the scaffolding collapses. What would be left of you without your words? Not less, just different. More honest, maybe. You've spent your life wrapped in narration, constantly explaining, defending, arguing with yourself. But who are you when the voice stops? A stillness, a pressure behind the eyes, a watcher that never speaks. Maybe that's you. But even now, you are trying to describe it. Wrap it in language. Turn it into something thinkable. You're building another trap, another cage. So let me ask you this. If everything you believe is built from words, if those words define what you can feel, want, remember, if yourself is just a recursive sentence looping forever, then who are you in the silence between the words? The body that was never yours, you call it your body, as though you own it, as though it obeys you, as though it is you. But this possession is an illusion. You are not your body. You are not in your body. You are the noise it makes trying to explain itself. Let's begin with something obvious. You did not choose your body. You did not choose its shape, its functions, its limitations. You inherited it. A genetic script written long before you were conscious. That script dictates your desires, your weaknesses, your fears. It dictates your death. You don't control your heartbeat. You don't control your digestion, your immune system, your sleep cycle. You don't even control your breath, not really. Try holding it. Soon, the body will override you. It always does. So who is in charge? Now think of your gut. There are more bacterial cells in your intestines than there are human cells in your body. These microbes influence your mood, your immune system, even your decision-making. Studies show that gut flora can affect levels of anxiety and depression, even your risk-taking behavior. You are not one organism. You are a colony. When you say, I feel anxious, what do you mean? Is that you? Or the hormonal storm your body is drowning in? Cortisol, adrenaline, serotonin chemical tides that carry your thoughts without permission. A shift in glucose levels, and you become irritable. A vitamin deficiency, and the world turns gray. A tumor in your amygdala, and suddenly you're angry for no reason at all. You think you choose your reactions. You don't. Your body does. And it doesn't ask you first. Let's go deeper. Consider phantom limb syndrome, where amputees continue to feel pain or sensation in limbs that no longer exist. The body remembers what isn't there. Or perhaps more accurately, the brain refuses to update the map. You feel pain in a place that doesn't exist. Now reverse it. People born without certain limbs sometimes report feeling them anyway. The blueprint was there before the body ever formed. So what is more real, the body, or the map in the brain that insists it should exist? You don't live in your body. You live in your idea of your body. And that idea is broken. The rubber hand. Illusion demonstrates this. A subject's hand is hidden. A rubber hand is placed in front, and both are stroked in synchrony. Soon, the subject begins to feel the rubber hand as their own. A false hand, but the brain accepts it. Ownership is fragile. Identity is assignable. The self is negotiable. Let's go darker. People with body integrity. Identity disorder feel that certain limbs do not belong to them. Not metaphorically, viscerally. They beg for amputations. Some perform them at home. The body they were born into is experienced as alien, and they are not delusional. Brain scans show differences in the somatosensory cortex. So what if your own body never quite belonged to you either? Now consider interoception, your sense of the internal state of your body. Most of it runs below awareness, but it's always there. Heartbeat, hunger, breath, heat, pressure. These are not external sensations. They're signals from the machine you ride inside. But the machine sends mixed messages, misfires, lies. People with panic disorder often misinterpret benign bodily sensations as catastrophic. A flutter in the chest becomes a heart attack. A gasp becomes suffocation. They are not imagining the fear. It is born from the body's whispers, misread by the mind. Now consider that your sense of emotion is also a bodily signal. You feel shame as heat in the face, anxiety as tension in the gut, sadness as weight in the chest. What you call feelings are interpretations of physical states. Interpretations, which means they can be wrong, which means you can be wrong about what you are, what you want, what you believe. You think you look out from behind your eyes, but there is no you in your head. Split open the skull, and there is tissue, neurons, a web of gray jelly humming with potential. But no observer, no soul, no pilot. Only processes, only patterns, only the dream of control. Now, try this. Raise your hand. Watch it move. You say, I did that. But the signal to move your hand began before you were conscious of it. We know this. It has been measured. What you feel as intention is just the brain informing you, after the fact, of what it has already done. You are a witness, not a driver. So, ask yourself if your movements begin before you intend them. If your pain can come from a limb that doesn't exist. If your body houses microbes that shape your mood. If your emotions are guesses made from chemical fog. Then what part of your body can you truly say is you? Where do you end and the machine begin? Or were you never separate? Memory is a lie you tell yourself. You believe your memories are sacred, that they are yours, that they hold the story of who you are. But memory is not a recording. It is a reconstruction, a fragile, flickering illusion spun from fragments and fantasy. And it lies constantly, without your consent. Let's begin with the misinformation effect. In a classic experiment by Elizabeth Loftus, participants watched a video of a car accident. Some were asked how fast the cars were going when they hit. Others were asked how fast they were going when they smashed. Those who heard smashed remembered broken glass that never existed. A single word rewrote their memory. Now ask yourself, what words have others used to rewrite you? Let's go deeper. Each time you recall a memory, your brain reactivates it like opening a file. But in doing so, it becomes malleable, editable. You add details, change context, revise emotion. Then the brain saves over the original. The next time you remember it, you're remembering the revision. Every memory you have is a copy of a copy of a copy. So what happens to your past if every act of remembering corrodes it? Let's talk about false memories. Entire events can be implanted. In one study, Loftus convinced people they had been lost in a shopping mall as children. They remembered details, the smell of popcorn, the sound of escalators, but it never happened. The memory was fiction, and they believed it anyway. Now think of how much of your life you don't remember. Your first year gone, your third birthday blurred, your first kiss warped, trauma dissociated, joy misplaced. What you call your life story is a constellation of selected moments arranged to make meaning. But you do not remember the truth. You remember the version that allowed you to survive. Now consider flashbulb memories, vivid, emotional recollections of shocking events. 9/11s, a car crash, the moment someone left. You feel certain they are accurate, but they are no more reliable than mundane memories. The emotion makes you trust the memory more, not remember it better. Emotion is not a measure of truth. It's just another chemical distortion. Let's go deeper. In Alzheimer's, memories fade in reverse. The present collapses. Then the recent past. Then childhood. The self disintegrates backward through time until there's nothing left but motor functions and instincts. You watch your parent or partner become a stranger, and you realize memory was the only thing holding them together, which means memory is the only thing holding you together, but your brain doesn't care about truth. It cares about coherence. It will fabricate events to bridge gaps. Confabulation, it's called. It happens not just in trauma or brain injury, but in everyday life. You misplace your phone. Your mind invents a story of where you last saw it. You're wrong, but you believe it. The belief becomes memory. The memory becomes identity. The identity becomes you. So what if none of it ever happened? What if your happiest memory was a lie? What if your worst trauma was a composite, stitched together from fragments, nightmares, and cultural scripts? You assume you remember what was important, but importance is a bias, a survival instinct. The brain stores what might help it stay alive, not what was real, not what was meaningful. And even meaning is mutable. Think about a relationship you left, a friendship you lost. At the time, it felt like the center of your universe. Now it's a photograph you can barely feel. A name that tastes like ash. That emotion once real, once defining erased. So ask yourself, if you forget something entirely, did it happen? Or did the erasure undo it? Let's go further still. Your memory of yesterday may be a fabrication. Your memory of this morning, of the sentence you read 5 seconds ago, all of it may be the product of a system that simulates continuity because continuity feels safer than chaos. And you'll never know the difference. Now consider anterograde amnesia, the inability to form new memories. Patients live in a 30-second loop, constantly reintroducing themselves, perpetually shocked by the unfamiliar. They don't remember who they are, but they still feel emotions. They still suffer. They still laugh. So what is the self without memory? Sensation, a reflex, a ghost with a heartbeat. But here's the final fracture. Even now, you are building a memory of reading this. But your brain is distorting it, compressing, forgetting, reshaping. By the time you reach the end of this paragraph, you will already be misremembering the beginning. So tell me, if your past is a hallucination, if your identity is retrofitted from fragments, if your most precious memories can be implanted or erased, if you forget, rewrite, or confabulate without knowing, then what if anything has ever really happened to you? And if nothing happened, who are you now? Consciousness is not yours. You believe that you are conscious, that this moment, this feeling of aliveness belongs to you, that there is a you to whom it all happens. But what if consciousness is not a possession, not a state, not even yours? What if it is a glitch? Let's begin with the simplest fact. No one knows what consciousness is. Not really. Not philosophers, not neuroscientists, not artificial intelligence researchers. There is no agreed-upon definition, no test for its presence, no clear mechanism for its origin. You are alive inside something no one understands, and yet you trust it completely. The hard problem of consciousness, coined by David Chalmers, asks why subjective experience exists at all. Why doesn't the brain just function in darkness, processing inputs and outputs like a computer? Why do you feel? Why are you aware of your awareness? There is no answer that we can locate the neural correlates of consciousness, the areas of the brain that light up during waking states. We can manipulate them with drugs, trauma, meditation. But correlation is not causation. We know where consciousness happens, but not why it happens, or even what it is, and that should terrify you. Now imagine a philosophical zombie, being identical to you in every way, behaviorally, biologically, chemically, but with no inner experience. It smiles, cries, writes poetry, screams when burned, but there is nothing behind its eyes. How do you know you're not one? How do you know anyone else is conscious? You can't. You never will. Consciousness is the only thing you cannot share. Go deeper. Consider blindsight, again patients who are blind, but can still guess the location of objects correctly. Their eyes receive data. Their brain processes it, but they experience no awareness. The brain sees. The self does not dot, so who's in control? Now take somnambulism, sleepwalking. People have driven cars, climbed buildings, even committed crimes. While unconscious, their bodies navigate the world with precision, memory, and intent without awareness. If you can act without being conscious. Then what is consciousness for? Let's go darker. During epileptic seizures or under the influence of certain anesthetics, people sometimes enter a state called conscious awareness without recall. They are awake, responding, functioning, but form no memory of the experience. So again, what is the difference between being and knowing you are being? Now consider integrated information theory, a leading framework for understanding consciousness. It suggests that consciousness arises from systems that integrate information in complex, specific ways. Not just quantity of data, but structure of integration. According to this theory, consciousness is not binary, it's a spectrum. Your level of awareness right now is different than it was an hour ago. Different when you're in pain, or dreaming, or panicking, and yet you believe yourself is consistent. That you are the same you across all states. You're not. You are only conscious of being conscious when your brain lets you be. You don't control that switch. Ask, if a system is more integrated than your brain, say, an advanced AI or a future quantum network, would it be more conscious than you? Would it feel deeper, see further, dream in higher dimensions? And would it pity your flickering little awareness? But here's the real fracture. You assume that consciousness arises inside your brain. But panpsychism, a theory supported by some contemporary physicists and philosophers, suggests that consciousness is not produced by matter, but that matter itself may be conscious in some rudimentary form. Electrons, quarks, stars, the universe itself. If true, your consciousness isn't yours. It isn't even in you. You're just the place where it happened to coalesce. So who are you to claim it? And if consciousness is not uniquely human, if it's a property of the universe, like gravity or mass, then you are not special. You are not even central. You are a passing configuration of neurons, temporarily reflecting awareness, like a puddle reflects the moon. And like all puddles, you will evaporate. But the moon will remain. So let me ask, if consciousness is a cosmic accident, if it can exist without memory, without identity, without you, if it is not proof of soul, but just a side effect of complexity, if even now it could be fading without you noticing, then what does it mean to say, I am aware? And how would you know if that awareness has already left you? The reality you see is not the one you're in. You woke up this morning and believed you returned to the same world you left last night. The bed was where it always is. The walls, the ceiling, the light filtering through. You believed you were in the same house, the same timeline, the same body. But what if you weren't? What if every second your brain reassembles a reality from fragments, and each time it chooses a different one? Let's begin with the reality model theory from neuroscience. Your brain does not passively receive sensory data. It actively predicts what reality should look like. Your senses provide feedback to correct the model, not to create it. This means that what you perceive is not what is, but what your brain expects to be. You don't see reality. You hallucinate agreement. The term is predictive coding. Your brain constantly anticipates incoming stimuli, and when the data matches the prediction, You feel certainty. But when it doesn't, you feel surprise, or fear, or dissonance. This model explains why you miss obvious changes in your environment, why you overlook glaring errors, why you only see what fits the narrative. You live inside a story your brain is telling itself, and it edits constantly. Let's talk about reality tunnels, a concept from Timothy Leary and Robert Anton Wilson. Each person constructs a mental framework through which they interpret the world, shaped by culture, trauma, belief, and expectation. Two people can look at the same event and inhabit utterly different realities. Not interpretations. Realities. Now. Scale that concept. What if entire civilizations, entire epochs, are built inside collective hallucinations? Think of the divine right of kings. Think of race, borders, money. These are not natural laws. They are shared delusions. The moment belief vanishes, they collapse. So what does that say about the world you believe in? Let's look at quantum mechanics. The observer effect tells us that particles behave differently when they are being measured. In the famous double-slit experiment, light acts like a wave until it is observed, and it acts like a particle. Reality appears to shift based on weather. It is being watched. So what is the universe doing when no one's looking? Let's go deeper. The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics proposes that every possible outcome of every event exists simultaneously in branching universes. When you flip a coin, both heads and tails occur, but in different timelines. You only perceive one. You are the version that landed here. But how many others didn't? And what if you shift between them all the time? You assume your reality is stable, but you have no objective proof that yesterday happened exactly as you. Remember it. Memory is unreliable. Time is nonlinear. History is rewritten constantly by governments, by parents, by your own mind. Even now, you are forgetting. So what if the world you're in is not the one you woke up in? Now consider the Mandela effect, a phenomenon where large groups of people misremember the same event. The spelling of a logo, the number of U.S. states, a movie that doesn't exist. Dismissed as false memory. But what if it's something else? What if your reality changed, and only your memory didn't? Let's go darker. Simulacra and Simulation by Jean Baudrillard suggests that modern reality has become indistinguishable from its representation. You no longer experience the real. You experience symbols, curated feeds, fabricated news, performative relationships. The simulation replaces the real, not as illusion, but as dominance, and you participate willingly. Your reality is mediated through a screen, a scroll, an algorithm. You don't know what's happening. You only know what's trending. You don't feel events. You feel the narratives surrounding them. You are not in the world. You are in its echo. Now consider dreams. While dreaming, you believe you are awake. You accept the impossible, flying, teleportation, the dead returning. You feel real fear, real joy. But then you wake. You call it false. But it didn't feel false. So ask yourself, what would it feel like to wake from this? What if you already have? What if this life is the dream you never noticed? Now try this thought. There is no shared reality, only overlapping hallucinations. Those overlaps are shrinking. Social media divides realities into algorithmic tribes. Politics fractures truth into performance. Conspiracies flourish not because people are ignorant, but because they are isolated in tunnels with no exits. Even science is interpreted through tribal filters. So whose reality are you in? Whose hallucination are you performing? And what if the walls of this reality tunnel, this predictive hallucination, are collapsing? What if your perception is no longer converging with consensus? What if you are drifting away from the shared dream? Would you know? Or would you still say, this is real, even as everything stops making sense? You were programmed before you were born. You believe your choices are your own, that your preferences, your values, your fears arose from within. But before you ever made a decision, your circuitry was already written. Your character was compiled in a code you never saw, on hardware you never chose. You are not the programmer. You are the program. Let's begin with epigenetics, the study of how your environment influences gene expression. Not just your own environment, but your ancestors. Trauma, famine, stress. These can leave biochemical marks on DNA, passed down for generations. Mice exposed to a smell paired with electric shocks gave birth to offspring terrified of that. Same smell. Fear. Inherited. Now think about what that means. Your aversions. Your gut-level panic. The things that repulse you for no reason at all. These may not be your memories. They may be your grandmother's screams, echoing through your genes. You are haunted by pain that never belonged to you, and it doesn't stop. With fear, studies show that infants as young as a few months display preferences for certain faces, rhythms, tones of voice. Long before language, long before memory, you had bias. Built in, pre-wired. Where did it come from? Now let's talk about personality. The 5-factor model: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness. Neuroticism is the dominant. Theory in psychology. These traits are highly heritable. Identical twins, raised apart, display astonishing similarities. Preferences, habits, even political attitudes. You didn't build your personality. You inherited its scaffolding. What you call growth is often just your nature unfolding. Now consider this. When do you make a decision? Research by Benjamin Libet in the 1980s showed that the brain begins to prepare for a voluntary action before the person becomes aware of deciding. The readiness potential, a burst of neural activity, precedes conscious intention by several hundred milliseconds. Your brain acts. Then your consciousness invents the story of choice. Let's go deeper. Your beliefs feel sacred. But they, too, are programmed. You were born into a culture, a language, a mythos. You were taught which gods to worship, which strangers to fear, which behaviors to punish. By the time you were old enough to question, the operating system had already booted. You call it truth. But it's just local software. Had you been born across the border, or 10 years earlier, you would believe entirely different things. You would feel them with the same conviction. You would defend them with the same fury. So where is your will? Is it in the fact that you question your programming, that you resist it? But even resistance is shaped by the system. Rebellion is another behavior the machine anticipates. You learned what freedom means from books written by people inside their own cages. Let's talk about mirror. Neuron cells in your brain that fire when you watch someone else perform. And action. These are the building blocks of imitation, empathy, learning. They blur the line between observation and participation. You see someone cry. You feel it. You don't know where their pain ends and yours begins. You learned by copying. Even your deepest values are borrowed postures. Now take language. You think in it, feel in it, remember in it, but you didn't choose your language. You were given it, and inside that language are the structures that define your perception. How you categorize objects, time, even emotion. Studies have shown that people from different cultures feel emotions differently based on whether their language contains specific words for them. You can't feel what you can't name. You can't name what you weren't taught. So what part of your emotional life is really yours? Now go darker. When people suffer frontal lobe injuries, their personalities change. Their ethics shift. Their desires alter. In some cases, criminal behavior emerges. The soul fractures not from trauma, but from physical damage, which means your morals are not transcendent. They are meat. Wiring. A few volts in the wrong place, and the you love disappears. You are not a sovereign being. You are a neural machine. You are the echo of 1,000 conditions. You are code compiled in blood and breath. So let me ask, if your personality is heritable, if your thoughts arise before you choose them, if your beliefs depend on geography, if your empathy is mimicry, if your values can vanish with a stroke, then what part of you can be said to be free? And if there is no freedom, what is there to forgive? The self is a story that was never true. You believe in a continuous self, a stable identity that persists through time. The child you were, the teenager you hated, the adult you became, all linked by an unbroken thread called you. But this thread is fiction. There is no self. There is only the story. Let's begin with the ship of Theseus, the ancient paradox. Suppose you replace every plank of a ship, one by one. Eventually, none of the original remains. Is it still the same ship? Now suppose you rebuild the original ship with the discarded pieces. Which is the real one? Now replace ship with you. Your body replaces itself constantly. Every skin cell, every gut lining, even most of your skeleton gone and remade. Your brain rewires, your personality shifts. The you from 10 years ago no longer exists. Yet you cling to the illusion of continuity, because without it, the center collapses. Let's go deeper. Neuroscience has found no central self in the brain. No homunculus, no inner pilot. There is no you behind your eyes. Instead, there are modular processes, each handling different functions: vision, language, memory, fear. What you call you is the integration of these voices. And sometimes they don't agree. Split-brain patients, those whose corpus callosum has been severed, offer chilling evidence. In experiments, the two hemispheres behave like separate individuals. One hand buttons the shirt, the other unbuttons it. One writes a word, the other erases it. One side says yes, the other says no. Which one is you? Now consider dissociative. Identity disorder, formerly multiple personality disorder. One body, multiple selves, each with its own memories, handwriting, allergies, accent. You say, that's rare, that's pathological. But what if it's just an extreme version of what you do every day? You are not oneself. You are a collection of roles, reactions, voices. Think of how you behave with your parents, with your lover, with your boss. Each version feels real. Each one claims to be you, but they contradict each other. They remember different things. They want different outcomes. You don't have a self. You have a cast, and the script changes constantly. Let's talk about the narrative self, the story your brain tells to create coherence. It takes your memories, your traumas, your triumphs, and strings them into a plot. It selects and edits. It ignores. It embellishes. It gives you a protagonist, but it is fiction. Your life is not a story. It's a cascade of events, randomly, assigned meaning. And the narrator is unreliable. Now consider Buddhism, which has argued for over 2,000 years that the self is an illusion. Not metaphorically, literally. The anatta doctrine says there is no enduring soul, only impermanent processes. The more you cling to the idea of self, the more you suffer, because you are clinging to something that never existed. But the brain fights this truth. It feels unnatural, empty. And so it invents. You call yourself introverted, anxious, creative, broken. These are not identities. These are explanations your brain retrofits onto behavior. They are not you. They are the story your neural circuits tell to feel consistent. But you are not consistent. Studies in behavioral psychology show that context determines action far more than personality. In different environments, you become different people. You shift unconsciously. You mirror. You adapt. There is no core. Only reflection. So ask yourself, when you're alone, who are you? Remove your job. Remove your name. Remove your past. Remove your body. What remains? Silence. Now go darker, that the self is a hallucination. If your memories are reconstructed, if your desires are inherited, if your emotions are interpretations, if your choices are scripted, then what are you defending? What are you so? Afraid of losing? Maybe the fear isn't that the self will die. Maybe it's that it never lived. So tell me, if there was never a you, then who exactly is reading this sentence? Time doesn't exist the way you think it does. You live by the ticking clock. You feel yourself moving forward, birth to death, sunrise to sunset, event to memory. You assume time is a straight line, measured in seconds, years, regrets. But this is not what physics tells us. Time, as you understand it, is a lie. Let's begin with Einstein's theory of relativity. It shattered the notion of universal time. According to relativity, time is not constant. It slows down near massive objects. It speeds up at high velocities. Astronauts on the International Space Station age slightly slower than you. Not metaphorically, measurably. 2 clocks, 2 truths. Which one is real? Now imagine the twin. Paradox. One twin stays on Earth. The other travels at near light speed in space. When the traveler returns, she is younger than her sibling. They were born at the same moment, but lived different durations. So which moment was the present, and which one was the lie? Let's go deeper. You assume the past is fixed, the present is real, and the future is open. But this idea is based on perception, not physics. According to the block universe theory, all points in time, past, present, future, exist simultaneously. Time is not something that flows. It is something you move through. Or more accurately, something your brain simulates movement through. You are not traveling through time. Time is already there. All of it. Now ask, what does now mean? There is no absolute now. What is now for you is already past. For someone else far away. If a supernova explodes in another galaxy, you might see it today, but it happened millions of years ago. Or maybe it hasn't happened yet. Depending on where you're standing, reality shifts. Now is relative. Reality is location dependent. Let's make it worse. Your brain is always behind. It takes time for light to hit your eyes, for neurons to fire, for perception to form. What you experience as now is already the past by at least 80 milliseconds. That may not seem like much, but it means your consciousness is never in the present. You are always watching a recording. And yet you feel immediate, connected, real. That feeling is constructed. It's called the specious present, a window your brain invents, so you feel. Like time flows, but it doesn't. The world is static. Your mind stitches the frames into a movie, and the movie has no projector. Now consider this. You think of your life as a timeline, a past filled with choices, a future you hope to shape. But studies in neuroscience and psychology suggest your memory alters the past, and your biases distort the future. Your timeline isn't a line at all. It's a loop. You remember the past in ways that support who you believe you are now. And you imagine the future in ways that confirm your importance. Even your regret is edited. You believe, if only I had done this, the outcome would have been different. But you never had control over time. Only the illusion of revision. Now, let's talk about entropy. The only reason we believe time flows forward is because entropy increases. Things fall apart. Ice melts, bodies decay. But what if this arrow of time is not a law, but a tendency, a pattern? There are theoretical conditions in which entropy could reverse. If that happens, what happens to your sense of self? You are only you because things move forward. Reverse the current, and you unravel. Now consider time perception. In trauma, time dilates. A car crash takes forever. A fall stretches into eternity. In boredom, time drags. In ecstasy, it vanishes. So which version is the real one? You believe in the clock, but your body obeys something else. And then there is death. You think death is the end of your timeline. But if time is an illusion, if every moment exists eternally, then death is not an end. It is a coordinate, one node among billions. Already written, already occupied, you've already died. You just haven't reached the frame. So ask yourself, if time is not constant, if the present is always behind you, if the past is edited, if the future already exists, if your timeline is fabricated, then what is the thing you are moving through? And what if you've never moved at all? Language thinks for you. You speak to describe the world. You write to capture your thoughts. You believe language is a tool, a medium, an interface between inner reality and outer expression. But that belief is backward. You don't use language. Language uses you. Let's begin with the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, the theory that the structure of your language determines the structure of your thought. It's not that language reflects what you think. It limits what you can think. In other words, the words available to you define the concepts you can even imagine. You don't speak your thoughts. You think in your speech. Consider this. The Parahu people of the Amazon have no words for specific numbers. They use only terms for few, some, and many. Not surprisingly, they struggle to conceptualize exact quantities. There. Reality is not just linguistically different. It is numerically disabled. Now ask, what concepts are missing from your language? And how much reality have you never known? Simply because no one gave you the words? Let's go deeper. Language is full of metaphor. You talk about grasping ideas, falling into depression, building an argument. These aren't literal. They are structural illusions. And yet, these metaphors shape how you interpret. Every experience, you fight illness, you break news, you run out of time. What if those metaphors never fit? Then you've misunderstood everything. And still language shapes memory. In one experiment, participants watched a car crash. Those asked, how fast were the cars going when they smashed? Gave higher speed estimates than those asked when they contacted. A single word warped the memory. A different verb. A different reality. Now ask, how many of your memories are linguistic hallucinations? Your emotions, too, are shaped by vocabulary. Languages vary in the emotions they name. The German word schadenfreude, pleasure in another's pain, has no perfect English equivalent. The Filipino gigil, the overwhelming urge to squeeze something cute, is wordless in most tongues. If your language doesn't have the word, can you truly feel it? Or does language give you the permission to feel? Let's go darker. What is I? The self is encoded in grammar. In English, I is the subject, the center, the actor. In Japanese, subjects are often omitted. The context carries the identity. In Lakota, verbs encode relationships between speaker and listener, not personal ego. In many indigenous languages, time is described by direction, not tense. These are not quirks. They are worldviews. You are not only speaking differently, you are existing differently. And yet, language is full of lies. Euphemism masks horror. Civilians are collateral damage. Torture is enhanced interrogation. Lies are alternative facts. By changing words, you alter moral boundaries. Language anesthetizes the mind, convinces you that war is peace, that poverty is choice, that cruelty is necessary. and you repeat it unknowingly. Your words are not yours. Language is viral. It spreads from mouth to mouth, unchecked, rewriting cognition. Richard Dawkins called it a meme, not a joke, but an infectious idea. Every word you speak is a contagion. Every sentence a strand of DNA replicating in your mind. Now ask, do you believe what you believe? Or do you repeat what you were taught to say? Your identity is constructed in language, your name, your values, your religion. Even your memories are stored in narrative form. Strip away the words, and the you collapses. No story, no self. And even now, you're hearing these words in your head, in your own voice, believing they are thoughts you understand. But they're not yours. They are entering through your eyes. They are being installed. This is not reading. It's programming. So tell me, if your world is built from grammar, if your values are linguistically coded, if your feelings require words to exist, if your self is a function of syntax, then who are you when the words go silent? And when language leaves you behind, do you remain? The universe doesn't care about you. And that's the point. You were raised to believe in meaning, that your life has purpose, that the world is shaped by stories and intentions, that you were meant to be here. But the universe didn't ask for you. It doesn't know you're here. It cannot care, because care requires a mind. And the cosmos has none. Let's begin with scale. The observable universe contains an estimated 2 trillion galaxies, each with hundreds of billions of stars. Our sun is one star in one spiral arm of one average galaxy. Earth is a speck. You are a flicker on that speck. Now measure yourself against that dot. You are 70 kilograms of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen assembled by chance, animated by chemistry, destined for decay. You contain 37 trillion cells. But the bacteria in your gut outnumber your own cells. You are not a being. You are a colony, and the colony is temporary. Let's talk about cosmic indifference. The laws of physics do not favor your survival. Radiation kills you. Vacuum kills you. Gravity crushes you. Temperature extremes rip you apart. In nearly every corner of the universe, life cannot exist. The fact that you're here is not a sign of design. It's a statistical artifact. You're not meant to be here. You're just not yet extinct. Go deeper. The Earth has existed for 4.5 billion years. Homo sapiens for maybe 300,000. Civilization? 6,000. Industrial society? 200. If the Earth were a 24-hour clock, your entire species appeared 1 second ago. And already, it's ending forests, acidifying oceans, destabilizing climates. You are not the culmination. You are the accident. And yet you believe in meaning. You say, everything happens for a reason. But that's just pattern seeking. A same neural bias that made ancient people see gods in lightning and faces in clouds. It's called apophenia. It helps us survive. But it also lies. The universe has no agenda. Only entropy. Let's talk about the heat death of the universe. Eventually, all stars will burn out. Black holes will evaporate. Matter will decay. No light. No structure. Just the infinite stretch of space uniform, cold and silent. This is not myth. This is the predicted endgame. All complexity will be erased. All memory gone. No one left a morning. And still, you say, but I feel meaning. I love. I suffer. Yes, but even that is impersonal. Your joy is neurochemical. Dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin. Your despair is cortisol and serotonin imbalance. These are not cosmic signals. They are levers. The machinery of survival. You are not feeling truth. You are reacting to stimuli. Let's go darker. You think human life is sacred. But the universe disagrees. Mass extinction events have wiped out 99.9% of all species. A gamma ray burst, an asteroid, a solar flare, these could end you tomorrow. Not as punishment, not as fate, just because it can dot. So where is your meaning now? Religion offers comfort. So does nationalism. So does identity. But these are just systems built on symbolic meaning, not physical truth. They are maps, not territory, and they are fragile. A single shift in culture, a single collapse, and your meaning dies with the story. Now consider existential nihilism, the idea that life has no inherent purpose, that any meaning must be created. But even that creation is fleeting. You build a life, a legacy, a name. But the sun will consume the earth. The galaxy will dissolve. The atoms of your body will scatter. No one will remember you. Because there will be no one. And still you pretend. This matters. You say, but I love my children. You say, I want to help others. Fine, but even love ends. Empires fall. Languages disappear. And when all sentience is gone, even the memory of your meaning will vanish. So why lie to yourself? Why insist the universe cares when it never did? You may feel a coldness creeping in now, a weight behind your eyes. That's not despair. It's awareness. The awareness that everything you built in your mind was a story on borrowed time. So let me ask, if the universe is indifferent, if your species is temporary, if entropy will erase every poem, every promise, every child, if even the word meaning will one day be meaningless, then why are you still pretending your suffering matters? And when it finally doesn't, will you grieve or feel relief? You don't know what you know. You walk through the world convinced you understand it. You believe your beliefs are built from facts, that your mind is a vessel, carefully filled over time with truth. But truth is not what your mind is designed for. It's designed for survival. And survival tolerates delusion. Let's begin with cognitive biases, systematic distortions in your thinking. There are hundreds. They shape how you remember, decide, believe, and argue. You have the confirmation bias. You seek evidence that supports what you already think and ignore what contradicts it. You have the availability heuristic. You judge likelihood by ease of recall. If it's vivid, it must be true. So your truth is convenience. You believe you're rational. But your brain is not a reason engine. It's a justification machine. In a famous study, psychologists gave participants moral dilemmas. When presented with a conclusion first, people retroactively changed their reasoning to support it. They didn't find truth. They invented reasons. You don't think to reach truth. You think to feel right. Let's go deeper. Your memory is a liar. Every time you recall a memory, you reconstruct it. You don't retrieve it like a file. You rebuild it. And each time, you override it slightly altered, slightly warped by present emotion or context. This is called reconsolidation. It's why eyewitness testimony is unreliable. Why your childhood is fiction. Your mind is a bad historian and a worse journalist. Now think about the Dunning-Kruger effect, a cognitive bias, in which people with low ability at a task overestimate their competence. The less you know, the more certain you feel. Why? Because you lack the skill to recognize your ignorance, which means your confidence is often inverse to your accuracy. So ask yourself, how many of your strongest opinions are built on sand? Let's talk about false memories. In experiments, researchers have successfully implanted memories of being lost in a mall, shaking hands with Bugs Bunny at Disneyland, impossible, and witnessing a crime. People not only believe the stories, they create rich emotional detail around them. You can remember things that never happened and feel them as real. Now ask, how many of your memories are real only because you repeated them? How many times have you told a story not because it was true, but because it was accepted? You believe what is socially rewarded, not what is accurate. Let's go darker. You make decisions before you're aware of making them. In multiple studies using brain imaging, researchers found that the brain's motor cortex shows activity before a person reports a conscious decision. The body acts. The brain rationalizes after the fact. Free will doesn't drive thought. It explains. So what is knowing if you never really chose what to believe? Now let's look at groupthink. Humans conform to the group, even when the group is wrong. In the Asch conformity experiments, participants denied the evidence of their own eyes to match group answers. They weren't lying. Their perception shifted. To fit the social reality, you see what you're told to see, and believe what keeps you safe. Then there's motivated, reasoning, the tendency to evaluate information in ways that support your desires or identities. You don't weigh facts. You filter them through your fears, your values, your tribe. You're not seeking truth. You're protecting the mask. Now consider belief perseverance. Even when presented with irrefutable evidence, people often stick to false beliefs. Not because they're stubborn, because their identity is woven into the lie. To unlearn would be to ungrow yourself. You don't know what you know. You feel what you know. And what you feel is rarely real. Let's end with this. Your beliefs shape your perception. Your perception filters your beliefs. It is a closed loop, a self-reinforcing hallucination. The longer you look through it, the more invisible it becomes. So let me ask, if your memories are rewritten, if your reasoning is retrofitted, if your knowledge is tribal, if your decisions are post hoc, if your confidence is misplaced, if your mind protects comfort, not truth, then what do you actually know? And if you don't know that, who exactly is the one doing the knowing? Death has already happened. You live as if death is in the future, a distant shadow at the end of a path. You believe it comes for you one day, later, not now. But this is a miscalculation. Death is not ahead of you. It is around you. And in many ways, it has already happened. Let's begin with biology. The moment you were born, your cells began dying. Apoptosis programmed cell death is essential to development. Your fingers are only separate because the webbing between them died in the womb. Your brain refined itself through cellular suicide. You exist because death has already sculpted you. You are not fighting death. You are made of it. Let's go deeper. Your body replaces itself constantly. Every few weeks, your stomach lining is new. Your skin turns over every month. Red blood cells last 120 days. Even parts of your skeleton renew. The self you claim to be is a moving window, a pattern, not a substance. That means the you reading this sentence is not the you who read the last one. And still, you believe in continuity. Now consider memory. Every memory you hold is filtered, distorted, or forgotten. The person you were 5 years ago is dead in every meaningful way. That version of you, the one who made those decisions, who loved those people, who feared those things no longer, exists. Only ghosts of their choices remain. Psychologists call this the end of history illusion, the belief that you have changed a lot in the past, but will change very little in the future. You look back and see corpses. You look forward and see a monument. But you are neither. You are dissolving. Right now. Now. Let's talk about physics. From a relativistic standpoint, the universe is a block of space-time. Every moment already exists. Past, present, and future are coordinates. From this view, you are not on the way to death. You are already dead somewhere in space-time. You just haven't reached that coordinate yet, and it doesn't care how you feel about it. Let's go darker. You don't fear death. You fear the idea of your death. You fear the loss of self, of memory, of identity. But these are already decaying. Every dream you forgot, every face you misplaced, every name that dissolved in time, those were miniature deaths. You have died 10,000 times in the space of your life, and not once did you notice. Now consider ego. Death, the dissolution of the self, in psychedelic experience, meditation, or trauma. People who undergo ego death report no I, no boundary, no division between observer and observed. The ego dies and what remains is indescribable, vast, cold, or nothing at all. So ask, if your sense of self can disappear and return, was it ever truly there? Or was it just a story clinging to survival? Now let's enter the medical world. What is death? Is it the heart stopping? The brain ceasing activity? The end of consciousness? There are people who have been declared dead and revived minutes, even hours later. People who experienced nothing. People who experienced everything. Which death was the real one? In some traditions, death is not a moment. It is a process. The body cools, cells rupture. Consciousness fades like a signal pulled from the wire. By the time you say, "I'm dying," it's likely already begun. You are mid-fade. You have been fading all your life. Let's get personal. There are things you've done that can never be undone. Relationships ended. Words you'll never retrieve. Roads not taken. Opportunities lost. These are not metaphors. These are permanent deaths. They will never be reborn. They will never return. And you walk on, unaware you are surrounded by corpses. Ask if everything you are is in flux, if your past selves are unreachable, if your body has already changed, if your memories are dust, if your death already exists in space-time, then what part of you is still alive? Is it the breath? The heartbeat? Those, too, are automated. You don't control them. So what exactly do you think will die that hasn't died already? You are being watched, but not by what you think you have always known. The feeling, that prickle on the back of your neck, the sensation that someone is observing you, measuring you, judging you, you brush it off. It's just paranoia. But you're right. You are being watched, just not in the way you imagine. Let's begin with surveillance capitalism. Every click you make online is recorded. Every pause, scroll, hover captured by unseen systems. Your location, your preferences, your heart rate, your facial expressions. Data scraped not for safety, but for prediction. They don't just want to know what you're doing. They want to know what you'll do next. And the machines are learning. Now consider this. Facebook can predict your sexual orientation, political affiliation, and emotional state better than your spouse based solely on your likes. Google knows where you've been for the past 5 years, down to the meter. Your phone listens. Your smart TV watches. Your life is a live feed. And you gave them the password. But this isn't the unsettling part. The real watchers are inside. Let's go deeper. Your own brain is surveilling you. Your thoughts are monitored by systems you do not control. You have mental sensors filtering what's allowed into consciousness. Freud called them defense mechanisms. Today, we call it the default mode network, the part of your brain responsible for self-referential thought, daydreaming, and internal narration. It is always active. It is always watching. It is not always honest. You think you are your thoughts, but you don't choose your thoughts. They appear, and even stranger, they arrive as observers. The part of you that watches the thoughts is not the part that generates them. So who is watching whom? Now consider the illusion of transparency, the belief that others can see your internal state, that they can see you blush, see your shame, see your fear. It creates a double consciousness. You behave as if you're being perceived, even when alone. You perform. Even in the dark. Let's go darker. There's a psychological phenomenon called the third man factor. In extreme conditions, mountaineers, shipwreck survivors, trauma victims people report the sensation of an unseen presence guiding or observing them. They hear voices, feel a being. Some call it God, some call it hallucination. But why does the brain do this? Because the watcher is built in. Developmental psychology shows that children internalize caregivers. The voice of the parent becomes the inner critic, the inner guide, the inner judge. You are followed not by a ghost, but by your own reconstruction of judgment. Your superego watches every move, and it is not kind. It corrects you, punishes you, mocks you, holds you to impossible standards, and it never sleeps. Even when you rest, it patrols your dreams, tells you who you're not, what you failed to become. You are under surveillance by the version of yourself you wish existed, and it is always disappointed. Now step outside yourself. In Panopticism, philosopher Michel Foucault describes a prison where inmates are always visible to a central tower, but they don't know when they're being watched. So they act as if they are always observed. The result? They discipline themselves. That's what society has done to you. Your algorithms, your authorities, your social expectations. These are towers. And even when no one is watching, you watch yourself on their behalf. That you have become your own warden. And what about the watchers that aren't human? AI models now monitor job interviews, police interrogations, school exams, even therapy sessions. They watch for micro-expressions, tone shifts, hesitation. They detect lies. They claim to know your true self. But what if they're right? What if the machine sees more clearly than you do? It doesn't care about your excuses. It sees your pattern. It calculates your trajectory. And soon, it may decide your outcome. You believed watching was a human act. But the watchers are not human anymore. Now ask yourself, if everything you do is recorded, if your thoughts are monitored by internal critics, if your behavior is modified by imagined observers, if your identity is shaped by machine predictions, then who are you when no one's watching? And are you sure that moment even exists? Nothing is solid, including you. You live in a world of matter. Chairs hold you. Ground supports you. Your body feels firm, tangible, real. You knock on wood and believe in hardness. You look in the mirror and see a boundary. But solidity is an illusion. And the illusion is total. Let's begin with atoms. Everything you see, your body, your home, your food, is made of atoms. And atoms are 99.9999999% empty space. If the nucleus were the size of a peanut, the electron cloud would stretch a mile wide. You are not solid. You are mostly nothing. So why can't you pass through walls? Because of electromagnetic repulsion. The electrons in your body repel the electrons in the chair. It's not that you touch the world. It's that you hover above it, held up by invisible forces. Every step you take is a non-contact event. You've never actually touched anything. Let that sink in. Now, let's talk about quantum uncertainty. At the smallest scales, particles don't have precise locations. They exist in probability fields. Until measured, they are clouds of potential. The electron in your body isn't here or there. It's maybe here, maybe there. You are not a fixed object. You are a swarm of guesses. And it gets worse. Your body is constantly exchanging matter with the world. The air you breathe becomes your cells. The food you eat becomes your blood. You lose 30,000 skin cells every minute. Within a year, 98% of your atoms are replaced. You are a process, not a thing. There is no permanent you to point to, only the performance of continuity. Now let's examine the ship of Theseus again. If every part of your body is replaced, are you still you? You say yes, because the pattern remains. But if someone builds a perfect copy of you, atom by atom, and that copy wakes up across the room, who are you? The one in your head, or the one across the room? Now go deeper. Particles pop in and out of existence in a vacuum. Quantum fluctuations mean that nothingness is never truly empty. It boils with virtual particles. The void is a humming field of chaos. Which means even nothing is something. Even nothing is unstable. Now ask, what about your brain? Neuroscience shows that consciousness emerges from electrochemical activity, waves of ions, pulses of electricity. But neurons are built from atoms, which are built from particles, which are built from what exactly? Fields? Probabilities? Uncertainty? So your mind, your sense of I, is built on a cascade of non-solid processes, resting on fluctuating potentials, built from empty space. You are a ghost, pretending to be a person. You are scaffolding made of lightning, wearing a mask of flesh, and you say, but I feel solid. Of course you do. The illusion is evolutionary. If your body felt like the void it truly is, you wouldn't survive. So your senses lie. They construct solidity, color, sound, warmth, but these are interpretations, not reality. Color doesn't exist in the world. It's your brain decoding wavelengths. Sound is pressure waves. Your mind translates them into tone. Touch is electrical feedback from force sensors in your skin. All of your solidity is just signal processing. You are a simulation, rendered from noise. Now consider this. If your solidity is fake, if your self is replaceable, if your mind is a flicker in chemical winds, if your body is evaporating, then what exactly do you mean when you say I am real? And if you are not real, what is this thing reading these words? Your decisions were made before you knew you had them. You believe in choice. You weigh your options. You think, you decide, you act. Free will is your compass. You are the captain. But this belief is not just false, it's chronologically impossible, because your decisions were made before you were aware of them. Let's begin with the Libet experiments. In the 1980s, neuroscientist Benjamin Libet asked participants to move a finger whenever they felt the urge. He monitored their brain activity. The results: the brain showed a spike called the readiness potential hundreds of milliseconds before the participants reported deciding to move. The choice had already occurred. Conscious awareness came after. You don't choose. You observe the choice. Let's go deeper. Subsequent studies have pushed this even further. Some researchers have predicted decisions up to 10 seconds before participants became aware of them, just by analyzing brain activity. This isn't intuition. It's detection of unconscious patterning. The brain fires. The body prepares. You become aware after . So what is free will, if will comes too late? Let's talk about post hoc rationalization. Every day, your brain makes micro-decisions. What to glance at, which way to walk, how to phrase a sentence. You only become aware of a few. For the rest, you invent explanations after the fact. You lie to yourself constantly. Not because you're dishonest, but because consciousness can't keep up. Now ask, what part of you thinks it's in charge? You feel like a pilot. But studies of split-brain patients, where the connection between brain hemispheres is severed, reveal multiple centers of decision-making. One hemisphere sees a word. The other draws an image without knowing why. Each side creates its own logic. You don't have one will. You have competing scripts stitched into a narrative that pretends to be unity. And then there's priming. Show someone the word elderly. Can they walk more slowly? Mention cleanliness, and they judge others more harshly. These effects happen without awareness. A smell, a color, a facial expression, each can shift your behavior before you realize it. You are not rational. You are primed. Your preferences, often constructed in real time. Ask someone to rank their top 5 paintings, and then change the order they're shown in their preferences shift. Not because they changed their mind, because their mind was never stable. Your mind doesn't make decisions. It manages stories. Now. Go darker. Criminal law rests on the concept of agency, of choosing between right and wrong. But studies show that damage to certain parts of the brain, like the ventromedial, prefrontal cortex, can erase moral decision-making. The person still speaks, smiles, reasons, but their moral compass is shattered. So what is punishment if morality is a product of circuitry? How many bad choices are simply broken wiring? Now consider this. You didn't choose your brain. You didn't choose your genes. You didn't choose your upbringing. You didn't choose your traumas. You didn't choose your first language. You didn't choose what country filled your head with rules. You didn't choose the values that shaped you. You didn't choose the chemicals that form your moods. You are the product of forces that were not optional. So what part of you is ever free? And if no part of you is free, then what exactly are you responsible for? Now some will say, yes, but I can still resist. I can choose not to act. But where does that resistance come from? A value? A memory? A fear? Those too were installed before you were aware, before you could ask. So let me ask, if your brain acts before you do, if your reasons come after the choice, if your past shaped your behavior, if your feelings can be manipulated, if your will is a ripple on deeper currents, then who is making the decisions? And when you finally notice the choice, was it ever really yours? Yourself is an algorithm. You believe there is a you behind your eyes, a center, a self, a stable identity that persists across time, memories, decisions. You believe that your name, your history, your preferences, these are the parts of a whole. But there is no whole. There is only output, and it comes from a system you didn't design. Let's begin with what cognitive science already suspects. The self is not a singular entity. It is a user interface. What you experience as you is the brain's way of presenting complex systems in a manageable way. Like a smartphone screen simplifies millions of lines of code into icons you can touch, the self simplifies neural chaos into a narrative avatar. You don't think your thoughts. They arrive. You don't generate identity. You observe it happening. Now consider modularity theory, the idea that your brain is a collection of semi-independent modules. One handles language, another emotions. One detects threats, another social cues. They compete, cooperate, override each other. The self is not the conductor. It is the music. In moments of trauma, in sleep, in intoxication, in dissociation, the music stutters. Different modules gain dominance. You act out of rage, or freeze in fear, or say things you didn't mean, but you did. Just not the you. That's speaking now. So which one is real? All of them? None? Let's talk about machine learning. Algorithms learn by pattern recognition. Feed a system enough data, and it will find structure. It will predict the next word, the next click, the next move. That's what your brain does. It absorbs inputs. It processes them. It produces behavior. Every preference, every value, every opinion you hold was shaped by data. Parents, media, culture, trauma, reward. You were trained, not born. You are a fine-tuned model. Yourself is a string of outputs optimized for survival. Now ask yourself, what is the difference between you and an A? You say, but I feel. Yes, so does a machine trained to respond to effective stimuli. You say, but I have memories. So does a neural net trained on sequences. You say, but I have free will. We've already shown you don't. So where's the distinction? Go deeper. You talk about myself as if it's a possession. But who is the owner? You say, I made myself, but that's circular. The builder cannot be the product. That yourself is recursive. It references itself to prove it exists. It believes in its own mythology. Now let's examine the illusion of coherence. You believe your preferences are stable, that you are someone, but in reality, you behave differently depending on context, hunger, mood, weather, who's watching. You are contextually generated, a different person at work. At home, in crisis, you don't have a self. You have a portfolio of personas, and you switch between them like apps, automatically, without permission. Let's go even deeper. Brain scans show that your sense of self can be altered by stimulation. Apply magnetic pulses to certain areas of the brain, and people report feeling disembodied. Transcranial magnetic stimulation can suppress moral judgment, decision-making, even religious belief. Yourself is neuroelectrical software. It can be hacked, and yet you protect it. You guard your self-image. You react when someone threatens your narrative. You resist information that doesn't match your identity, not because you're arrogant, but because your entire neural integrity depends on the story remaining intact. But the story isn't real. It's just the most stable hallucination your brain can sustain. Now ask, if your brain is a pattern-finding machine, if your thoughts are just outputs from modules, if your identity is adjusted by inputs, if your memories are reconstructions, if your preferences are products of training data, if your self is the output of recursive simulation, then who is reading this? And when the algorithm ends, what's left behind to shut it down? Time doesn't exist the way you think it does. You believe in before and after, past and future. You imagine time as a line, with yourself traveling along at birth behind you, death ahead. This illusion feels natural, inevitable, but that's because it was built into you. Time doesn't flow. You do. Let's begin with physics. Einstein's theory of special relativity broke the idea of absolute time. Events that are simultaneous in one frame of reference can occur at different times. In another, time stretches, compresses, warps. The faster you move, the slower your time becomes. Time is not universal. It is subjective motion. There is no now that everyone shares. So what is the present? In relativity, all moments past, present, future exist at once in a block universe. The cosmos is not a timeline, but a frozen structure. Every event already is. From your first breath to your last thought, every second of your life already exists. You are not moving through time. You are embedded in it. Your life is not a journey. It's a static sculpture you can't see all at once. Now let's go deeper. You say, but I remember the past, not the future. That's because your memory runs backward. Your consciousness moves in one direction, like a needle playing a vinyl record. You hear the music unfold, but all the grooves are already there. You don't move through time. You play out a sequence. Your sense of causality is an illusion, because your brain, like all matter, is subject to entropy, the tendency for systems to move from order to disorder. Entropy is the only physical arrow of time. But what if you're confusing direction with perception? Consider this. You drop a glass. It shatters. You never see the shards leap back together. Why? Because the reassembly is statistically improbable, not physically impossible. The laws of physics are time-symmetric. They work the same in reverse. So why do you experience time moving forward? Because your brain can only process it that way. You are a machine evolved to interpret causality, to survive in a world of entropy. You string together events in one direction, because that's what keeps the pattern going. If your consciousness ran backward, you wouldn't notice. You just think that was forward. Now ask, what is a second? A minute? An hour? You think they're natural, but they're inventions, human constructions. The division of time into slices is arbitrary. In other cultures, time is circular, seasonal, relational. The idea of a timeline is not universal. It's cultural software running in your mind. Even your sense of aging, of moving forward, is self-deception, because your body doesn't age in real time. Different organs regenerate at different speeds. Cells die and replicate asynchronously. Your chronological age means nothing to your biological entropy. Time is not uniform. Not for your body. Not for your brain. Let's go even darker. Neurologically, time perception can be warped. In trauma, time slows down. During boredom, it drags. In flow states or fear, it vanishes. Your brain modulates time like a lens, stretching or collapsing it depending on survival demands. There is no stable now. You never live in the present. You live in a lagged simulation. Your brain takes time to process light, sound, thought. You are always a few milliseconds behind. By the time you notice time, it's already gone. So what does this mean? It means the past is not behind you. It's there. The future is not ahead of you. It's already written. The you reading this is a frozen cross-section of a being stretched across time, like a worm embedded in space-time. You are not passing through time. You are time sliced thin enough to believe you are separate. So let me ask, if every moment of your life already exists, if past and future are illusions of entropy, if your brain manufactures now from delay, if your choices are already etched into the block, then what part of you is actually moving? And if you are not moving, who is it that dies? Memory is a lie you tell yourself. You believe your memories define you, that they form the bedrock of your identity, that your past is a stable archive, and when you remember, you retrieve a faithful copy of what once was. But memory doesn't store. It rewrites. And every time you remember, you corrupt the original. Let's begin with the neuroscience. When you recall a memory, it doesn't come from a vault. It is reconstructed, rebuilt from fragments stored across different regions of the brain. And the act of remembering modifies it. This is called reconsolidation. You edit the memory each time and overwrite the old file. Every recollection is an act of fiction. Now think of what that means. That warm childhood memory you revisit, it has changed with each replay. Each emotion you felt while remembering regret, nostalgia, grief, became embedded in the next version. So your memory is not of the event. It's of the last time you remembered it. Your past is generationally inbred nostalgia. Let's go deeper. Studies have shown how easy it is to implant false memories. In classic experiments, researchers convinced participants they had been lost in a mall, been licked by Pluto at Disneyland, or even witnessed a traumatic event that never happened. The subjects didn't just believe the false memories. They filled them with vivid details, faces, emotions, dialogue. They didn't lie. They believed. Now ask, how many of your memories were influenced by photographs, stories, movies, suggestions? The mind cannot easily distinguish between internal and external sources. This is called source monitoring error. You remember the story, not the event. Let's talk about flashbulb memories. These are memories of shocking events, 9/11s, the death of a loved one, disasters. People recall them with confidence, where they were, who told them, what they were wearing. But studies show flashbulb memories degrade like all others. People are certain. And wrong. Your emotional intensity is not a marker of truth. It's a marker of certainty, which is often its opposite. Now consider trauma. You may think trauma sears events into memory, but trauma can fragment, distort, or erase memory altogether. Survivors often have incomplete, jumbled recollections. The mind protects itself by reshaping reality. So which version do you trust? The one that hurts the most? Or the one that vanishes? And then there's forgetting. Your brain forgets by design. You forget names, faces, years, conversations, meals, days. You forget more than you ever retain. This isn't failure, it's efficiency. Because memory is not for the past. It's for future decisions. You don't remember things that don't help you act, so your identity is not a record. It's a forecasting tool, which means yourself is adaptive mythology. What you remember is what helps the story work. Let's go darker. If memories define the self, and memories are unstable, distorted, and constructed, then the self is built on fictions you never meant to write. You say, but I remember who I am. No. You remember who you've decided to be. And when that decision changes, so do your memories. This is why people revise their past after a breakup, after trauma, after revelation. They look back and say, I always knew. I never loved them. I was never that person. Because the present self rewrites the past narrative to stay coherent. So let me ask, if every memory is a copy of a copy, if emotional intensity replaces truth, if suggestion shapes your recall, if forgetting is functionality, if the past shifts depending on who you are now, then what part of you is true? And if that truth is just another memory, who exactly is remembering it? History is not what happened. You believe the past is settled, and it lies behind us, firm and factual. You think history is a book already written. But what if it's not a record at all? What if it's a construction? Because history is not what happened. It's what we agreed to remember. Let's begin with documentation. Only a fraction of human experience was ever recorded. Fewer still were preserved. Most of the world's history-spoken language, oral traditions, entire cultures was lost before a single pen hit paper. So the past we study is the past that survived power. Now ask, who wrote it? Winners. History is shaped by survivors, by victors, by the literate, by the elite. It's filtered through kings, conquerors, empires. And it omits voices that were inconvenient, powerless, or annihilated. Entire peoples disappeared. Not because they didn't matter, but because they didn't control the archive. Now consider historical bias. Every historical account is a perspective, and perspectives come with agendas. Ancient scribes rewrote genealogies to legitimize dynasties. Explorers exaggerated glory and concealed slaughter. Colonizers renamed, redrew, rewrote. Maps lie, dates lie. Even photos lie. History is not neutral. It's narrative with intention. And narrative requires a hero. So we simplify, we edit, we assign moral arcs, we reduce vast systems of complexity into bullet points and textbook summaries. A revolution becomes a sentence. A genocide becomes a statistic. A civilization becomes a myth of progress. The story gets cleaner. The blood gets scrubbed out. Let's go deeper. Archaeology, paleontology, anthropology. These sciences deal in fragments. A broken bowl, a ruined wall, a skeleton. From these, we speculate entire cultures. But our interpretations are shaped by our own culture. So we read our own minds into the dust. We once believed Neanderthals were stupid brutes. Then we found evidence of tools, ornaments, burial rituals. Now we ask, were they like us? Did they mourn? Dream? But we don't know. We project. Now let's talk about historical erasure. Governments erase. Regimes rewrite. In North Korea, entire generations were taught that Kim Jong-il invented the hamburger. In Stalin's Russia, enemies of the state were airbrushed from photographs. In the United States, entire chapters of colonial atrocities were replaced with sanitized language. History doesn't just fade, it's murdered. And even when preserved, it's fragile. A fire at the Library of Alexandria erased centuries. A hard drive crash deletes terabytes. A book banned. A photo shredded. And a world disappears. Now think about your own history. What do you know about your ancestors? Your great-grandparents? Beyond a few names, maybe a face, maybe a story nothing. You are separated from your own bloodline by only 3 or 4 generations, and already the truth is gone. Now go darker. What if all history is fiction, constructed by minds with flawed memory, shaped by culture, filtered by language, translated, interpreted, misinterpreted, reshaped to fit the present, even your own past, even the story you tell yourself about your life? Is narrative maintenance dot? So let me ask, if most of history was never recorded, if what was recorded was shaped by power, if that record was revised, erased, or destroyed, if every story is perspective, if the archives lie, and even your memory is faulty, then what exactly do you think the past is? And if you've never touched truth behind you, how can you be sure you're not inventing it in front of you? Consciousness may be an accident. You believe that to be conscious is to be special, sacred, a flame no machine can imitate. You see it as the proof of your aliveness, your awareness of awareness, your capacity to suffer, to reflect, to know you exist. But what if consciousness isn't a gift? What if it's a glitch? Let's begin with biology. Most creatures are not self-aware. They eat, sleep, reproduce, die. They respond to stimuli, but they do not observe themselves doing so. There is no mirror inside a jellyfish. No eye in an earthworm. And yet they thrive. So why did you develop this endless feedback loop? Some theorists believe consciousness is a spandrel and evolutionary byproduct. Not selected for, not necessary, just a side effect of increasing complexity. Like the spaces between the arches of a cathedral, structurally inevitable, but not designed. Your mind is not a crown. It's residue. Now go deeper. In cognitive science, we talk about qualia, the raw feel of experience, the redness of red, the sting of regret, the silence between words. These things cannot be measured, only described. We assume they're real because we feel them, but there is no proof that qualia exist outside your imagination. You can describe pain, but you can't prove it. You can name sorrow, but only in metaphor. You assume others feel as you do. But there is no bridge between your mind and theirs. You live in a locked room. You are the only mind you can ever confirm. Everyone else could be puppets. Now, consider the hard problem of consciousness. Why? And how physical processes give rise to subjective experience. We can map brain activity. We can correlate states with behaviors. But we cannot explain why it feels like anything to be you. Might not. And that should terrify you, because consciousness may not be necessary. It may be epiphenomenal, a harmless side effect of processes that would happen anyway, like steam rising from a boiling pot, visible, but irrelevant. Now go darker. What if you aren't even conscious right now? What if your sense of self is just a retroactive story told by a system that already made the decision, felt the emotion, took the action? We know this happens with movement. We know it happens with choice. What if experience itself is a delayed hallucination stitched together for narrative continuity? What if you are just an echo? Now let's ask a stranger question. Could a machine be conscious? Many say no. They say machines simulate behavior, but don't feel. But we simulate behavior. And if consciousness can't be measured, who decides where it begins? If a machine says, "I hurt," and behaves exactly as you do when you hurt, what makes your claim more valid? Is it because you have flesh? Because you believe you have a soul? Because you remember your childhood? What if the machine does too? Let's go even darker. What if the universe is conscious? Panpsychism posits that all matter carries some form of proto-consciousness. That consciousness is not emergent, but fundamental. That even atoms experience in ways we can't grasp. But then, what is the point? If a rock is conscious, if a virus dreams, if the fabric of space feels, then your consciousness is not special. It is just another flicker, and it will go out, and no one will notice . So let me ask, if consciousness emerged by accident, if it can't be measured, if it may not serve a purpose, if it's just a side effect of electricity in me, if it might be an illusion, if others may fake it better than you, then what exactly is experiencing these words? And if that thing disappears tonight, who will know it ever existed? The future may already be over. You think the future is open, a canvas waiting to be painted. You imagine possibilities, paths, decisions yet to be made. You comfort yourself with the idea of freedom, that tomorrow can be better, that your actions matter, that what lies ahead is still unwritten, but the future may be over. Not because it hasn't happened, but because it already has. Let's begin with determinism. In classical physics, the laws of motion are absolute. Given perfect information, every atom, every velocity, you could, in theory, calculate the entire past and future of the universe. This was Laplace's demon, a mind that knows all, predicts all. No choice, no randomness, only inevitability. You may say, but quantum mechanics changed that. Did it? Yes, quantum mechanics introduces probability, a range of outcomes. But those probabilities still follow rigid mathematical laws. And in some interpretations, like the many worlds theory, all outcomes happen anyway. Every fork splits into parallel realities. So what you call choice is just path selection in an infinite tree. And all branches exist, which means you don't create the future. You only travel through the version you are always going to. Let's go deeper. Your brain is a prediction engine. Every thought, every plan, every expectation is built on forecasting. But these forecasts are not based on freedom. They are extrapolations of prior data. Your future is a continuation of the known. Your plans are memory in disguise. Now consider entropy again. The universe is cooling, expanding, spreading out. Every star is dying. Every structure decays. The second law of thermodynamics guarantees that energy will flatten out. And when it does, nothing will move, nothing will think, nothing will change. This is the heat death of the universe, not with fire, but with perfect stillness. This isn't science fiction. It's the most likely scenario supported by physics. Every thought you have is an act of defiance against entropy. But entropy always wins. So the future doesn't end in wonder. It ends in silence. Now let's step inside your own future. Your body is decaying now. You've already passed your biological peak. Cells replicate with less precision. DNA mutates. Muscles weaken. Neurons die. No matter how much you exercise or optimize, you are in decline. This is not pessimism. This is thermodynamic reality. Yet you continue planning. You imagine the person you might become. But that person is just a projection. An echo of desire shaped by your current conditions. Studies show we are bad at predicting what will make us happy, or fulfilled, or whole. The future you imagine is a false idol, built by a mind that won't exist in 5 years. And what about civilization? We live in a moment of acceleration, technological, environmental, psychological. But acceleration is not infinite. Systems hit tipping points. Ecosystems collapse. Economies devour themselves. AI races ahead without brakes, and you think you'll Have time. You imagine warning signs, gradual decline, reversible trends. But collapses don't warn. They snap. So ask, what if your image of the future is not hope, but denial? Hope, as philosopher Ernst Bloch noted, is a fantasy you tell yourself to survive the present. A narrative of delay. It lets you postpone reckoning. It gives you the illusion of time. But what if there is no time? What if the most important moments of your life have already passed? What if the best version of you already died in a dream you can't remember? What if every choice you make now is just the echo of momentum? What if the future isn't open, isn't ahead, isn't waiting, but already closed, already behind you, already chosen by the parts of yourself you never understood? So let me ask, if the laws of physics are deterministic, if entropy guarantees decline, if your thoughts are predictable, if your visions are just memory fragments, if the cosmos is cooling toward silence, then what exactly do you think you're walking toward? And if the future has already ended, why are you still pretending it hasn't? You are not the one who's awake. You believe you're awake, alert, aware. You see the world, and it feels solid. You think thoughts, and they feel like your own. You feel pain, and it screams real. The colors, the sounds, the pressure of the chair beneath you, all of it convinces you that this moment is conscious. But what if consciousness itself is just another dream? What if this moment, this exact moment, is not what you think it is? Let's begin with dreams. When you dream, you do not know you are dreaming. You move through landscapes, face impossible events, speak with people who don't exist, and it feels as real as waking life. You accept the dream as truth. Until you wake. Then it dissolves. The logic unravels. The people vanish. You call it unreal. But the question is, how do you know you've woken up now? Every test you use to confirm your reality, the weight of your body, the rhythm of your breath, the sharpness of light, has been duplicated in dreams. There is no sensation that only happens when you are awake. No thought that guarantees wakefulness. No feeling that cannot be simulated. You may say, but I have memory. Yes, so do dream selves. You remember a life, a name, a story, because your mind generates the illusion of continuity. You carry a past. Only because the script started 5 minutes ago. Now, consider lucid dreams. In a lucid dream, you become aware that you're dreaming, and yet you continue dreaming. You can manipulate the world. You can walk through walls, speak to shadows, but you are still inside the simulation. Conscious awareness does not equal waking. It only nests the dream deeper. Let's go darker. Neurological studies show that your brain simulates the world before you perceive it. Sight is delayed. Sound is adjusted. Touch is inferred. You do not experience the world, you experience a model of it, built milliseconds late. So every moment you call real is already a reconstruction. Even your sense of self is a simulation your brain feeds to itself. A character in a story you didn't write. A mask worn by patterns in neat. You call this you. But it's just the part of the dream designed to recognize itself. Now examine inception loops, dreams within dreams. You wake into another dream, again and again, unable to distinguish levels. In each one, the world seems complete. Time passes, emotions burn. Choices matter, but none of it is anchored. And no one inside the dream knows how they got there. Like, you. Now go deeper. Philosophers have failed to prove we're awake. Descartes doubted his senses. The Matrix imagined neural illusions. Modern solipsists point out that all evidence of the world is filtered through your mind. And your mind is not reliable. You believe you woke up this morning. But how do you know you ever went to sleep? You say, other people confirm reality. but they exist inside your mind's model. If this is a dream, so are they. You say, but I can't fly. I feel gravity. That just means this dream has consistent physics. So let me ask, if every proof of wakefulness can be mimicked, if your brain simulates before you perceive, if the self is a hallucination that narrates its own story, if you don't remember entering the dream, if your past could be fabricated and you'd never know, then what exactly is different between this moment and all the others you've called unreal? And if you are not the one who's awake, then who's dreaming you? You were designed to be deceived. You think you seek truth, that your mind is a lighthouse piercing the fog. You pride yourself on reason, awareness, skepticism. But your brain is not built for truth. It's built for usefulness. And usefulness requires deception. Let's begin with cognitive biases. You are not a rational being. You are a patchwork of flawed heuristic shortcuts that once helped your ancestors survive, but now distort your every perception. Confirmation bias makes you ignore what contradicts your beliefs. Negativity bias makes you overreact to threats. Anchoring bias skews your judgment based on irrelevant numbers. The Dunning-Kruger effect inflates your confidence as your knowledge shrinks. You don't think clearly. You rationalize instinctively. Your reasoning doesn't guide your choices. It justifies them afterward. Now consider the illusion of explanatory depth. Ask someone how a zipper works, or a toilet, or a microwave. They'll confidently say they know until they try to explain it. And they falter, forget, contradict themselves. Walk through life believing you understand. You don't, but your mind hides that fact to protect your narrative. Coherence. Let's go deeper. Evolution didn't optimize you for truth. It optimized you for fitness. Truth is often dangerous. It reveals risks, contradictions, limitations. But delusion, well-crafted delusion, helps you act. Optimists live longer. Self-deceived people recover faster from illness. Confidence trumps accuracy in leadership. Believing you matter helps you survive longer, mate better, fight harder. Your brain is an engine for adaptive falsehoods. It rewards you for useful lies. Now look at perception. Your senses don't report reality. They filter it. You see a narrow band of light, hear a sliver of sound. Your eyes are blind to most of the spectrum. Your ears miss almost all vibration. Your skin registers only crude approximations. And even within those constraints, your brain fills in the blanks. There is a blind spot in each eye, yet you never see it. Your brain invents data to keep the illusion smooth. You believe you see the world. You don't. You see a hallucination. Your brain generates in real time. Now consider confabulation. Stroke victims sometimes lose the ability to perceive half the world. But when asked about it, they don't say, I can't see. They invent fantasies to explain away the absence. Their brains lie automatically, convincingly, without permission. Yours does too. Now, ask yourself, why does the placebo effect exist? Why does sugar help if you believe it's morphine? Why does pain lessen when you're distracted? Why do symptoms vanish if your mind thinks they should? Because belief shapes physiology. Because illusion rewires flesh. Now go darker. You don't. Just lie to yourself. You lie about lying. You tell yourself you're objective, open-minded, critical, but your brain is a machine designed to construct certainty. And certainty is the death of truth. The moment you believe you see clearly, you've stopped looking. So let me ask, if your mind edits your memory, if your senses hallucinate experience, if your beliefs are shaped by bias, if your thoughts justify decisions you didn't choose, if your biology rewards delusion over accuracy, if truth has no evolutionary advantage, then what makes you think you ever stood a chance at knowing reality? And if the voice in your head insists otherwise, can you even be sure it's you speaking? Your body isn't yours, you call it, your body. You speak of it possessively, my hands, my face, my breath. But you didn't build it. You don't control it. You barely even understand it, and the parts you think are you are mostly not you at all. Let's begin with the basics. Your body is not a single organism. It's a colony. There are more non-human cells in your body than human ones. Bacteria in your gut, on your skin, in your lungs. Viruses embedded in your DNA. Fungi living silently in your tissues. You are outnumbered. And yet these foreign passengers keep you alive. The bacteria in your gut break down your food, regulate your mood, manufacture your neurotransmitters. Without them, you couldn't digest, couldn't think, couldn't be. They don't serve you. They are you. Now consider chimerism. Some people carry the DNA of their unborn twin. Others carry cells from their children. Mothers host traces of their offspring for decades, sometimes in their brains. You are not genetically singular. You are a living mosaic. Now, look at autonomy. You don't control your heartbeat or your breathing unless you focus. You don't consciously regulate blood sugar, immune response, digestion. You don't rebuild your tissues. You don't choose to grow old. Your body acts on its own. Even your movements begin before your awareness catches up. The readiness potential. Measurable electrical signal fires in your brain before you consciously decide to move. You don't command your body. You witness it. Now let's examine the microbiome of your mind. Your mood is shaped by chemicals you don't will into existence. Serotonin, dopamine, cortisol. These rise and fall based on food, sleep, light, memories, and bacterial activity. Feel sad? Why? Was it your thoughts? Or a hormonal echo? Or a signal from your gut bacteria? Who didn't like your breakfast? You'll never know, but you'll tell yourself a story anyway. Because your conscious mind is the last to know, and the first to explain. Now go deeper. Immune cells patrol your brain. Not metaphorically, literally. They prune synapses, clean waste, and sometimes destroy neurons. They shape your cognition, and they're not guided by you. They're guided by ancient genetic logic. Your sense of self arises from systems that don't know you exist. Let's talk about symbiosis. You didn't evolve alone. Your body is an alliance of microbial kingdoms, viral invaders, and animal tissues stitched together by chance and time. You are the result of billions of years of blind mergers, and none of it asked your permission. You say, "This is my body." But your cells replace themselves constantly. Your skin today is not the skin you had last year. Your bones are different. Your gut is different. Even your brain's physical matter, regenerates. So which version is you? The one whose cells no longer exist? The one whose chemical balances shift with diet and mood? The one who claims ownership over a machine they never built, never fully command, and will never fully understand? Let's ask it plainly. If you don't control your cells, if your microbes outnumber your flesh, if foreign DNA lives inside you, if your mood is driven by bacteria, if your body changes entirely every few years, if your decisions lag behind your neurons, then what exactly do you think you own? And if your body isn't yours, then where exactly are you? Death is not what you think it is. You imagine death as an event. A moment. The heartbeat stops, the breath ceases, the eyes close, and that's it. Silence. Finality. The end of you. But death is not a switch. It is a process. And it doesn't begin when you think. And it doesn't end where you hope. Let's start at the edge. Medically, death used to mean the heart stopped. Then it meant the brain stopped. Now we speak in gradients: clinical death, biological death, brain death, cellular death, each with its own thresholds. You can be legally dead, but still metabolically alive. Your body can be cold, but still active at the molecular level. Your tissues can die. At different times, there is no clear boundary. Only slow surrender, in some cases. Brain activity continues for minutes after the heart stops. Some studies suggest faint electrical surges organized, almost conscious, can occur even after FLATLINE. So when do you leave? You assume death is the opposite of life. But death is embedded in life. Every second, billions of your cells are dying. Apoptosis, necrosis, programmed collapse. Your immune system kills parts of you to keep the rest functioning. You are always dying, just slowly enough to call it living. Now consider this. Your death has already begun. Your DNA has accumulated. Errors. Your telomeres shorten. Your proteins misfold. Entropy increases. The systems that keep you coherent have been failing since before you were born. The end isn't coming. It's arriving. Every moment silently. And when it does, what happens? You say, I stop existing. But what does that mean? Let's go deeper. Your atoms don't vanish. They disperse. Your carbon will become part of a tree, a rock, a worm. Your nitrogen might rise into the atmosphere. Your calcium could settle in the teeth of something that will never know your name. Your body doesn't die. It changes format. But what about you? There is no evidence, none, that consciousness persists after death. Near-death experiences? They are hallucinations, products of oxygen-starved brains, fragmented memories, cultural scripts. You don't see the light. You simulate it. Now, think about oblivion. You can't imagine it, can you? You picture blackness, silence, empty space, but even that is a kind of presence. True oblivion is absence of awareness, not sleep, not floating, not watching from above. Just nothing, not even the awareness that there is nothing. Try to picture what it was like before you were born. You can't, because you did not exist. That's what death is. Now consider digital afterlives. People dream of uploading consciousness, scanning minds. But these fantasies depend on the myth that your mind is a file that can be transferred. It isn't. It's an emergent process, dependent on the wet architecture of your meat brain. You can't digitize a process. Only mimic its output. So you might create a simulation of you. But it won't be you. You will still die. And the copy won't know the difference. Now ask, is that comforting? Let's go darker. What if death is not absence, but awakening? Not into heaven or reincarnation, but into a deeper simulation. What if this life is a dream, and death is the only way out? Or worse, what if death is recursive? What if you die and wake up here, again, and again, and again, each time with no memory, but with the same illusion of choice, the same belief in progress, the same quiet panic. You wouldn't know, because you've already died. And here you are. So let me ask, if death is a process, not a moment, if your consciousness ends without witness, if your atoms scatter into strangers, if your self dissolves into entropy, if even your simulations will forget you, if death is not the opposite of life, but its engine, then what exactly are you afraid of? And if your death is already happening, why are you still pretending you're alive?